The burgundy dress clung to Alyssa Price's skin like a bad omen. It wasn't the one she'd wanted to wear. The emerald silk that made her eyes glow had hung untouched in her closet. Cameron had insisted on this one. The deep red he claimed looked classier. She had learned to pick her battles, and tonight didn't seem worth another argument. Their engagement anniversary deserved peace, not another fight about clothes. The elevator doors opened to Bellacort's glittering world, where chandeliers dripped like frozen stars, and the city stretched beyond the glass in a sea of light. Alyssa's heels clicked across the marble floor, each sound sharp and deliberate, masking the quiet unease stirring in her stomach. A maitre smiled with professional precision and said, "Miss Price, your party is already seated." Your party, not your fiancé. The phrasing lodged in her mind like a splinter. She followed him through a maze of tables filled with Manhattan's elite. People turned to look, recognition flickering, envy following. The place buzzed with laughter, polished charm, and the quiet cruelty of people who never had to work for what they owned. Then she saw Cameron. He sat near the center of the room, a perfect stage for visibility. His dark suit gleamed under the light, his posture all confidence and control. But what froze Alyssa's steps was not him. It was the woman sitting beside him. Sophia Langford, the hotel heiress whose face had graced business magazines for years, smiled up at Cameron with the kind of ease only privilege could teach. Alyssa stopped 3 feet from the table. Her portfolio, filled with the blueprints she had designed for a new development project, suddenly felt heavier than bricks. Cameron stood, his face arranged into a mask of politeness. "Alyssa," he said, his voice smooth, careful. "Thank you for coming." "Thank you for coming?" The words sounded wrong. "What is this?" she asked, her voice steady despite the pounding in her chest. Cameron gestured toward the empty chair opposite them. "Please sit. We need to talk." She didn't sit. Something cold crawled through her spine. Around them, conversation began to hush. The air in Bellacort shifted, thick with curiosity. Cameron exchanged a glance with Sophia, who nodded like she was approving a business deal. "I've been thinking about our future," he began, "and what I need in a partner as I move forward with my career." "Your career?" Alyssa's grip tightened on the portfolio. "I'm planning to run for state senate next year," he continued, his tone rehearsed. "It requires certain considerations." He gestured slightly toward Sophia. "Someone with public experience, the right background and connections." Sophia understands that world. The words hit her like a punch. "You're breaking our engagement?" He nodded, calm as if discussing the weather. "It's what's best for both of us. You'll find someone suited to your background." Sophia smiled, her voice honeyed and cruel. "It's nothing personal, dear. Cameron just needs someone who fits." Her fingers went numb. The portfolio slipped from her grasp, papers scattering like fallen leaves across the marble. Blueprints she had spent sleepless weeks perfecting lay trampled beneath designer shoes. Cameron didn't even look down. Cameras flashed. Phones lifted. The restaurant fed on the spectacle like vultures circling fresh prey. Alyssa bent, gathering the blueprints with trembling hands, refusing to let them see her break. She rose, straightened, and said softly, "Keep the ring. Consider it payment for the year I wasted." Every step toward the door felt like wading through fire. Whispers chased her out, pity and gossip blending into a single poisonous hum. The October air outside bit into her skin as she stumbled onto the street, breath hitching. The night wind carried the echo of laughter from Bellacort's windows. She made it half a block before her legs gave out. The side street was quiet, empty except for the sting of her tears. She pressed her blueprints against her chest, as if they could protect her from humiliation. "Miss Price." The voice was deep, smooth, commanding. She looked up through blurred vision and saw a man standing a few feet away. Tall, dark hair, a black suit cut with impossible precision. His face was all hard angles and quiet intensity, his eyes dark enough to look dangerous. "I don't need help," she said quickly. He stepped closer, unhurried. "In 30 seconds, photographers will turn that corner. You can stay and give them another show or come with me." She hesitated. He extended his hand, palm steady, patient. "My car's waiting." The shouts of approaching voices made the choice for her. She took his hand. It was warm, firm, unyielding. He guided her to a sleek black car idling at the curb. She slid inside, heart still racing. As the door closed, the chaos outside disappeared. The air inside smelled like leather and something darker. Power, maybe, or danger. "Who are you?" she asked. The man's gaze met hers, calm and unreadable. "Someone who just watched your world collapse," he said, "and someone who might be able to help you build a new one." The car pulled away, city lights flashing across his face. She didn't know him. She didn't trust him. But for the first time that night, she wasn't running alone. And Thomas D'Angelo watched her in silence, already knowing she was about to change his world as much as he was about to change hers. Alyssa woke up to sunlight cutting across her small apartment, and the sickening hum of her phone vibrating non-stop. Messages from coworkers filled her screen, some sympathetic, some just nosy. By the time she saw the headlines, her stomach had already twisted into knots. The video from Bellacort was everywhere, her humiliation replayed in slow motion. Cameron Holt breaking off their engagement like it was a press conference. Sophia Langford's smirk frozen in every thumbnail. By noon, her boss sent a message that sounded kind, but wasn't. Maybe take a few personal days, let things settle. In her world, that meant they were already deciding if she was worth keeping. Her designs, her sleepless nights, her climb through the male-dominated firm, reduced to gossip fodder because of one public betrayal. When her phone buzzed again, it wasn't another coworker. It was a message that simply read, "If you're tired of being powerless, meet me at this address in 1 hour. TD." She stared at the initials. She didn't know anyone named TD, but something about the message felt deliberate, not threatening, just controlled. Curiosity warred with exhaustion. Logic said delete it. Her pride said, find out. 45 minutes later, she was in a cab heading toward the docks on the edge of Manhattan. The city grew quieter as they drove. Skyscrapers fading into warehouses and rusted cranes. The address led to a building that looked abandoned, its brick walls faded and its windows dark. The driver hesitated. She paid him and stepped out anyway. A door opened before she could knock. Inside, the air smelled of metal and espresso. Modern furniture replaced decay. Sleek, minimal, too expensive for this part of the city. 3 men in suits watched her silently from the corners. And there, behind a desk of black marble, sat Thomas D'Angelo. He looked different in daylight, still dangerous but less like a stranger from the shadows. His dark hair was neatly combed back, his jaw cleanly shaven, and his eyes, sharp, unreadable, studied her like she was a problem he'd already solved. "Miss Price," he said. His voice was calm, deep enough to vibrate through the room. "Thank you for coming." "I shouldn't have," she replied. "I don't even know who you are." "You know enough. You know I was there that night. You know I stopped the photographers from following you." She folded her arms, trying to look stronger than she felt. "And I'm supposed to thank you for that? No. You're supposed to listen." He gestured for her to sit. "You've been publicly humiliated. Your career is already bleeding out. Your ex-fiancé is preparing his campaign and using your downfall to polish his image. In a month, you'll be a cautionary tale about women who aim too high." "Wow," she said. "You're charming." His mouth curved slightly, not quite a smile. "I'm offering a way out." He slid a folder across the table. Inside was a contract, 6 months of marriage, $500,000, full confidentiality. "This is a joke," she said. "No, it's business." "You want me to marry you for money?" "For convenience," he corrected. "I need a wife to finalize an agreement with families who care about appearances. You need resources, and if you'd like, I'll make sure your ex-fiancé never recovers politically." Her pulse quickened. "You destroy him?" "I don't destroy people who don't deserve it." He paused. "But Cameron deserves it." The silence that followed was thick. Somewhere outside, a ship horn wailed. "Why me?" she asked finally. "Because you have nothing left to lose and everything to gain. And because you looked me in the eye that night and didn't beg for help." She stared at him. His calmness was unnerving. But something about his words hit deep. The world had already chewed her up. What was one more impossible decision? "If I say yes," she said slowly, "what happens then?" His gaze didn't waver. "Then you stop being their victim. And you become mine." Her heart stuttered. She couldn't tell if he meant it as protection or possession. Maybe both. But before she could reply, he leaned back and said almost gently, "You have 24 hours." Then the offer disappears. When she left the building, the cold air hit her like a warning. This was madness. Dangerous, reckless madness. But as she walked toward the street, her phone buzzed again. News alerts about Cameron and Sophia smiling at a gala, their perfect faces plastered on every screen. Her humiliation had gone global. And somewhere behind her, Thomas D'Angelo stood at the window of his office watching her go, already certain she would return. Alyssa stood in front of the mirror, barely recognizing the woman staring back. The reflection wore a tailored black coat and heels that weren't hers, her hair twisted neatly instead of falling loose the way she liked. She looked composed, controlled, but her hands trembled as she clutched the paper in her purse, the signed contract binding her to a man she barely knew. Thomas D'Angelo had called that morning. No hesitation, no second offer, just an address, a time, and the sentence that had sealed her fate. Be ready by 8. When the car arrived, sleek and silent, she hesitated only a moment before stepping inside. The driver didn't speak. The city blurred past the windows, skyscrapers giving way to quiet streets. Every instinct told her to turn back, to run. But running had gotten her nowhere. Tonight she was walking straight into danger and power. The building in Tribeca didn't look like a home. It looked like a secret. No doorman, no number, just mirrored glass and steel. Inside, the elevator required her fingerprint. When the doors opened, it revealed a penthouse larger than any apartment she'd ever seen. Cold marble floors, windows overlooking the Hudson, walls lined with art that probably cost more than her yearly salary. Thomas was waiting for her near the balcony. Black suit perfectly cut, glass of whiskey in his hand. He turned when she entered, his gaze sweeping over her not like a man admiring beauty, but like someone evaluating structure and design. "You're punctual," he said. "I'm reconsidering," she replied. He set the glass down. "You had 48 hours to reconsider. You signed. That means you're mine, contractually speaking." His tone wasn't arrogant. It was factual, almost detached, but there was something in his eyes that made her heart race faster. He handed her a small envelope. Inside was a wedding license already approved and signed by a private judge. The ink was still fresh. "It's legal," he said. "Effective immediately." She stared at her name beside his. Alyssa Price D'Angelo. The letters blurred for a second. Not from shock, but from realization. There was no turning back. "Where do I fit into this exactly?" she asked. "Your wife, your cover, your puppet?" He walked toward her, every step precise. "None of those. You fit into this as my partner in public and my protection in private. No one will touch you now. Not Cameron, not anyone else who thinks you're weak." His words had weight, but beneath the promise of safety lay something darker. Protection from who? From what? A soft chime echoed through the penthouse. The elevator opened again. A woman stepped out, sharp suit, dark eyes, the same kind of power Thomas carried but colder. "This is Lucia," he said. "My sister." Lucia circled Alyssa like she was inspecting a piece of evidence. "You don't look stupid." "That's a good start. Do you have any idea what you've agreed to?" "I can read," Alyssa said. Lucia smirked. "Reading and understanding are different things. My brother's world doesn't forgive mistakes. Remember that." "Enough," Thomas cut in, his voice like steel. "She's under my protection." Lucia held up her hands. "Just making sure she understands protection has limits." Then she turned back to Alyssa. "You should know his last wife didn't survive this life." The air shifted. Thomas's jaw tightened, his knuckles white against the glass he'd picked up again. "Lucia," he warned. She smiled without warmth. "Welcome to the family," she said, before stepping back into the elevator and disappearing. The silence that followed was heavy. Alyssa spoke first. "Your last wife?" He didn't look at her. A mistake that won't be repeated. She wanted to ask more, but something in his tone told her not to. Instead, he walked her through the penthouse, showing her her new room, larger than her entire apartment. When she reached for the door, his voice stopped her. "The security system will register your fingerprint tonight," he said. "You'll have access to everything here but nowhere else without clearance." "So I'm safe but trapped." she said quietly. He met her eyes. Safe is better than dead. That night, Alyssa lay in the massive bed staring at the ceiling, replaying Lucia's words. She didn't know what world she had stepped into, but it wasn't built on business alone. Somewhere in the shadows of Thomas D'Angelo's empire lay something dangerous, something that had killed before. When she finally drifted to sleep, a sound woke her again. The distant murmur of a voice, low and tense. She followed it to the balcony where Thomas stood, phone pressed to his ear. She doesn't know, he said. His voice was quiet but hard, and she doesn't need to. Not yet. He turned slightly, and for a moment the city lights caught his face, half shadow, half regret. Alyssa stepped back before he could see her. She didn't know what secret he was keeping, but she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Whatever this marriage was, it had just become far more dangerous than she ever imagined. The night of the gala came too soon. Alyssa stood in front of the mirror in a navy silk gown that shimmered like midnight, her pulse loud in her ears. She had not chosen this dress. Lucia had sent it, along with a note that simply said, "Make him proud." Every inch of her wanted to tear it off and wear something simple, something hers, but she had learned that survival in Thomas D'Angelo's world meant playing along until you understood the game. When she stepped into the living room, Thomas was waiting. He wore black, his tie perfectly knotted, his expression unreadable. The moment his eyes found her, something in his jaw softened. He said nothing for a long second, just studied her like she was a secret only he could see. Then he spoke. "You look perfect." He offered his arm and she took it, her hand trembling just slightly. In the elevator, silence stretched between them until he finally said the words that sent a chill through her spine. "Tonight, you will see the people who destroyed you and the people who want to destroy me. Smile for both." At the entrance of the Metropolitan Museum, flashbulbs burst like lightning. Reporters shouted their names, demanding confirmation of the rumors. Thomas ignored them all, his hand resting lightly on Alyssa's lower back, steady and possessive. Inside, the crowd shimmered with diamonds and danger. Alyssa spotted Cameron almost instantly. He stood near the champagne tower with Sophia at his side, their perfect smiles stretched too tight. Thomas leaned close, his breath warm against her ear. "Shall we give them a night to remember?" They crossed the marble floor together, drawing eyes as they moved. Conversations hushed. By the time they reached Cameron and Sophia, half the room was watching. Cameron's face lost its color when Thomas spoke. "Cameron, meet my wife." For a moment, the only sound was the soft hiss of champagne being poured. Sophia's lips parted, disbelief flickering across her perfect features. "That's impossible. You just—" Thomas cut her off with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Love doesn't wait for approval. Cameron recovered enough to offer a weak handshake. "Congratulations." His voice wavered. Alyssa looked him straight in the eye and smiled with practiced calm. "Thank you. I suppose timing is everything." Thomas guided her away before either could speak again. Around them, whispers spread like wildfire. The architect he humiliated, married to D'Angelo? Impossible. Alyssa felt her heartbeat steady for the first time in weeks. For the first time since Bellacort, she wasn't the victim. In a quiet corner beneath a massive marble statue, Thomas handed her a glass of champagne. "You handled that perfectly," he said. She tilted her head, studying him. "You enjoy humiliating people who cross you, don't you?" He didn't deny it. "I enjoy balance," he said softly. "You deserve to be seen as powerful. Now you are." But before she could reply, a shadow moved behind them. Lucia appeared, eyes sharp as glass. "We have a situation," she whispered. "Franco Varani is here. He's showing plans for a Red Hook development." Thomas's expression shifted instantly. The charming mask fell away. "Where?" "East Gallery, with the Castellanos." Lucia's voice was tight. "He has blueprints." Alyssa's heart skipped. The name Franco Varani had come up once before, spoken in hushed tones by Thomas's guards. She had assumed he was just another rival businessman. The way Thomas's shoulders tensed told her otherwise. "Stay here," he said. But curiosity had always been her worst weakness. 10 minutes later, she found herself slipping through the archway into the East Gallery. Franco stood before a small group of men, gesturing toward the blueprints on display. Alyssa's trained eye caught the inconsistencies immediately. Foundation too shallow. Low distribution wrong. A design meant to fail. She leaned closer. It's a front, she whispered to herself. Someone behind her spoke. You see it too. She turned to find Thomas standing beside her, his tone quiet but taut with tension. Franco's project isn't construction. It's transport. Weapons, maybe. Illegal shipments. If I'm right, those blueprints are a cover. Before she could respond, Franco noticed them. His smile didn't reach his eyes. D'Angelo, always a pleasure. And this must be your new wife. Thomas's arm slid around Alyssa's waist. She's an architect. She thinks your design is impressive. Franco's gaze turned sharp. Really? Alyssa forced a polite smile. Beautiful layout, but the foundation depth seems too shallow for waterfront soil. Unless, of course, you plan to keep what's underneath hidden. The words hung in the air like a spark before an explosion. The Castellanos exchanged glances. Franco's jaw tightened. Thomas's grip on her waist grew firmer. We should go, he said softly, but his tone carried warning. They walked out under a storm of whispers. In the car, silence thickened like fog. Finally, Thomas spoke. You just saved me from walking into a trap. Franco was using that project to move shipments under my nose. Alyssa turned to him. Then why do you look furious? Because now he knows you're not just my wife. He knows you're dangerous. The city lights flashed across his face as he spoke, and she realized something with a chill. He wasn't angry because she had interfered. He was terrified, not of Franco, but of losing her. Outside, the rain began to fall, streaking down the windows like glass tears. Inside, a war had begun, one that had nothing to do with business, and everything to do with survival. The morning after the gala, the penthouse felt different. The silence had weight, like the air before a storm. Alyssa stood by the window, staring at the skyline that glittered without warmth. Somewhere out there, Franco Varani was plotting his next move, and every instinct told her that last night had changed everything. Thomas entered the room, phone pressed to his ear, voice low and edged. He ended the call and set the phone down, his eyes darker than she had ever seen. Franco knows you exposed his plans, he said. His men were seen near the Red Hook site. That means you're not safe anymore. Alyssa turned to face him, her heartbeat quickening. You think he'll come after me? He didn't hesitate. I know he will. Before she could respond, Lucia stormed in, her presence sharp as broken glass. We received a message, she said, throwing a folded note on the table. Thomas picked it up, his expression tightening as he read. Alyssa stepped closer, catching the words scrawled in black ink. Tell D'Angelo his wife should stay out of business, that isn't hers. The air went cold. Alyssa crossed her arms. So he's threatening me. Thomas's jaw clenched. He's warning me. He looked at Lucia. Double the guards. No one comes in or out without clearance. Lucia nodded, but her eyes flicked to Alyssa. This is exactly what I warned you about. You drew attention. Alyssa met her gaze. I didn't draw it. I earned it by telling the truth. Thomas stepped between them before the tension could ignite. That's enough. Lucia turned on her heel and left, muttering under her breath. Alyssa waited until the elevator doors closed before speaking. You can't protect me by locking me away, Thomas. If Franco's targeting us, we need to understand why. Thomas's hand ran through his hair, a rare sign of frustration. You're not trained for this world, Alyssa. People like him don't fight fair. Neither do architects, she said quietly. Show me the site. Let me see what he's after. He stared at her for a long moment before finally nodding. Fine. But you stay beside me, no matter what. The car ride to the Red Hook construction site was tense. Vincent, Thomas's head of security, sat in the front seat, silent but alert. When they arrived, the scent of concrete and metal filled the air. Workers moved like ghosts, eyes wary, conversations hushed. Something was wrong. Inside the foreman's trailer, a woman sat trembling with a cup of coffee in her hands. Thomas crouched beside her. What happened? She pointed to the door, voice shaking. Someone left that note taped outside this morning. I thought it was a prank until I saw men watching from across the street. Thomas's expression hardened. Go home, he said. Vincent will see you there safely. When she left, Alyssa spoke. What are they trying to scare you away from? He glanced toward the blueprints pinned to the wall. This project blocks one of Franco's routes. If it succeeds, he loses millions. Then we're not just building offices, Alyssa said, moving closer. We're standing on top of something he wants back. Before Thomas could reply, a deep rumble shook the ground beneath them. The lights flickered. An explosion followed, a sharp, muffled thud from somewhere below. Dust filled the air. Thomas grabbed her arm, pulling her down as debris rattled the windows. "Get behind me," he ordered. His voice was calm, controlled, but his eyes burned with fury. Vincent burst through the door, gun drawn. "Gas main rupture in the basement," he shouted. "Could be accidental. Could be planted. We need to move." Thomas pulled Alyssa to her feet. "Stay close," he said, guiding her out of the trailer. Workers ran in all directions, alarms blaring. Flames licked up from a crack in the concrete near the far wall. They reached the car, and Thomas pushed her inside before climbing in after her. Vincent drove fast, tires screeching as they tore away from the site. Smoke rose behind them, dark against the pale sky. Alyssa turned to him, breath shaking. "That wasn't a gas leak, was it?" Thomas didn't answer immediately. His hand was still on her arm, gripping too tightly, as if to make sure she was real. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and rough. It was a message. Alyssa swallowed hard. "What kind of message?" "The kind that says they can reach us anywhere." Silence filled the car. Thomas stared out the window, his reflection hard as stone. For the first time since she'd met him, she saw something she never expected from the infamous Thomas D'Angelo. Fear. Not for himself, but for her. She touched his hand. "You can't keep me safe by shutting me out," she said softly. "If I'm part of your world now, then we face it together." His eyes met hers, dark and conflicted. "You don't know what that means." "Then teach me," she whispered. The car turned toward the city, the skyline burning gold in the distance. Behind them, the Red Hook site smoldered, the smoke curling into the evening air like a warning. Alyssa knew there was no turning back now. She had stepped fully into his world, and somewhere in that fire, their fates had just been bound together forever. Night pressed against the glass walls of the penthouse like a living thing. The city lights below flickered, but inside everything was still. Alyssa sat on the edge of the couch, the smell of smoke from the explosion still clinging to her hair. Thomas stood by the window, his reflection fractured by the skyline, his shoulders tight as wire. "You shouldn't have been there today," he said without turning. "You told me to stay close," she answered quietly. He turned then, his face shadowed but his voice sharp. "I meant close to safety, not the blast radius of a war." "A war?" Alyssa stood. "That's what this is now? Because a man left a note and lit up a construction site?" "It's not about the site," Thomas said. "It's about me. Franco's making it personal, and he's using you to get to me." He poured whiskey into a glass but didn't drink it. The amber light flickered through his hand, and for a moment he looked tired, older, haunted. "Tell me what this is really about," Alyssa said. "No more secrets." Thomas's jaw clenched. After a long silence, he spoke. 7 years ago I was married. Her name was Elena. She was kind, too kind for my world. Someone decided the best way to control me was to take her from me. They ran us off the road. I survived. She didn't. Alyssa felt her breath catch. She stepped closer. "I'm sorry." He looked at her, eyes burning. "Don't be. I killed the man responsible. And for a while, I thought revenge meant peace. It didn't. It just made me colder. I swore I'd never let anyone close enough to be used against me again. Until you..." Her chest tightened. "You married me for business, remember?" He smiled faintly, bitterly. "That was the plan. But plans change." Before she could answer, Lucia's voice echoed from the doorway. "You're not going to like this." Thomas turned, all emotion locked away again. "What happened?" "Franco's men are moving. We intercepted chatter. They know about Alyssa's office, her sister's address, even the routes she takes to work." "He's not bluffing this time," Alyssa froze. "How does he know that?" Lucia's gaze shifted to Thomas. "Someone close to us is feeding him information. A leak inside the organization." The air seemed to thin. Thomas's hand tightened around the glass until it cracked. "Find out who," he said. Lucia nodded and left. Alyssa stepped forward. "You think it's someone in your circle?" He didn't answer. He just looked at her with that same haunted intensity. "This isn't your fight," he said softly. She shook her head. "You keep saying that, but it keeps becoming mine. You can't fight this alone." He stared at her for a long moment, then set the broken glass aside. His hand reached out, hesitated, then rested against her cheek. You have no idea what kind of darkness you're standing in." "Then show me," she whispered. He kissed her before he could stop himself. It wasn't gentle. It was raw, desperate, the kind of kiss that burned through fear and reason. Alyssa felt his control unravel, felt the heat of everything he'd tried to hide. Her hand slid up his chest, gripping his shirt as if anchoring herself to something real in a world that kept shifting beneath her feet. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. Thomas rested his forehead against hers. "I told myself I'd never feel this again. And now you do," she whispered. "And now I'm terrified," he said. They stood like that for a long time, the city flickering around them. For the first time, Alyssa saw not the ruthless man the world feared, but the one who carried ghosts. The silence shattered when Thomas's phone buzzed. He answered, listening for a moment before his expression turned cold. "Another attack. One of my warehouses. Franco's making his move." He grabbed his jacket. "You stay here with Vincent?" "No," she said. "I'm coming. This isn't up for debate. If you go without me, you'll be fighting blind," she said. "I know his construction fronts. I might recognize something you don't." He hesitated. Logic told him to leave her behind, but something deeper wouldn't let him. He finally nodded once. "Fine, but you don't leave my side." Minutes later, they were in the car slicing through the night. The city looked different at this hour, quieter, colder, as if holding its breath. When they reached the site, flames licked at the edges of the warehouse. Men shouted, sirens wailed in the distance. Thomas barked orders, his voice calm even in chaos. Alyssa scanned the scene and froze. There, painted faintly on the wall, was a symbol she recognized from Franco's stolen plans. A circle intersected by a cross. Thomas followed her gaze. "What is it?" "It's not just a mark. It's a map coordinate, the same one hidden in Franco's fake blueprints. He's not just attacking you. He's sending you a message." "What message?" "That he's already inside your world," she said, "and someone you trust is helping him stay there." Thunder rolled in the distance, but it wasn't weather. It was the sound of war building between two empires, and Alyssa knew the storm was only beginning. Rain slammed against the penthouse windows like warning drums from the sky. The city below blurred into streaks of gold and shadow. Alyssa paced the length of the living room, her nerves stretched thin. Thomas stood at the table covered in maps, photos, and files spread out like pieces of a crime scene. The night before had proven one thing. Franco wasn't just fighting for control. He was hunting. Lucia's voice cut through the storm. "We traced the symbol you found. It's an old code Franco's crew uses to mark infiltration points. It means they've already breached security." She set a tablet on the table showing blueprints of Thomas's businesses across the city. Docks, storage units, construction sites, even the shipping yard in Jersey. The red marks spread like infection. Thomas studied the map, jaw tight. "Someone close is feeding them every move we make." Alyssa leaned over the table. "Then we find the leak? Who had access to these plans?" Lucia scrolled through names, each one carrying weight. Associates, contractors, legal advisors, security. Then she froze. Hartman and Associates. Alyssa felt her stomach drop. Cameron used to brag about working with them. He said they represented developers all over the East Coast. Thomas's gaze snapped to her. "You're sure? Positive? If Franco has someone inside Hartman, then Cameron might be their link. He has connections. He knows how your construction fronts work." Lucia cursed under her breath. "That explains how Franco got the Red Hook designs before we even broke ground." Thomas turned to Vincent. "Bring me everything we have on Cameron Holt. Finances, contacts, movements. If he's helping Franco, I want proof by morning." Vincent nodded and left without a word. Alyssa sank into a chair, the room spinning slightly. The thought of Cameron, the man who had once promised her forever, now selling information that could get her killed, made her skin crawl. Thomas watched her quietly. "You don't owe me strength all the time," he said softly. She met his gaze. "I'm not breaking, Thomas. I'm angry." "Good," he said. "Anger means you're still fighting." The room fell silent again, broken only by the thunder outside. Hours passed as Thomas and Lucia analyzed files, whispered into phones, and made coded calls. Alyssa drifted to the window, watching the rain blur the city lights. Her reflection looked different now. Not the humiliated woman from Bellacort. Someone sharper, someone who had learned that power wasn't about status but survival. The elevator chimed. Vincent stepped out, soaked from the storm, a folder in his hand. He placed it on the table. Found your rat. Thomas flipped it open. Bank transfers. Offshore accounts. The numbers didn't lie. Lucia exhaled. Cameron Holt. The name felt like poison in Alyssa's mouth. How long has he been selling information? Months, Vincent said. Started small, passing minor details. But when you married Thomas, he got desperate. Franco promised to erase his debts if he delivered sensitive data. Thomas's hands curled into fists. He's not just betraying me. He's trying to destroy her. Alyssa looked at him. Then let me help destroy him first. He turned, startled. You can't. You're the target. That's exactly why I can. She stepped closer, eyes fierce. Franco and Cameron think I'm still the weak one. The woman they humiliated. Let's use that. Lucia raised an eyebrow. You want to bait them. Alyssa nodded. Give them false information. Let Cameron leak it. When Franco moves, we'll know exactly who's pulling the strings. Thomas stared at her, torn between admiration and fury. You realize you're volunteering to be bait in a trap that could get you killed. Alyssa met his gaze. I realize that being scared won't save me, but outsmarting them might. Lucia smiled faintly. She's got more spine than half your crew. Thomas rubbed his temples, thinking. Finally, he nodded once. Fine, but we do it my way. My security, my people. A plan began to form. Alyssa would design fake architectural blueprints, something Franco couldn't resist stealing. A new waterfront development with enough fake promise to look real. The meeting would be scheduled at one of Thomas's secured warehouses. Cameron would find out through his usual channels. But as the rain beat harder against the glass, Alyssa couldn't shake the feeling that they were already being watched. Somewhere in the shadows of Manhattan, Franco was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Later that night, after Lucia and Vincent left, Alyssa found Thomas alone on the balcony, the wind pulling at his shirt, rain streaking his face. You don't have to do this, he said quietly when she joined him. She looked up at him. Yes, I do, because if we don't end this now, he'll never stop. Thomas's eyes darkened. You're braver than you know, Alyssa Price. She stepped closer, her voice steady. I'm not brave. I'm just done being afraid. He cupped her face, his touch rough but trembling. Then let's finish this together. Lightning split the sky behind them, illuminating their faces for a heartbeat. Two people caught between power and survival. Down in the streets, a black car idled across from the building, its windows tinted. Inside, a man with slick hair and cold eyes watched the penthouse through binoculars. Franco smiled. So the little architect wants to play games. Let her. He lowered the glasses, voice smooth as poison. Because when she steps into my trap, Thomas D'Angelo will lose everything he loves. The morning of the trap arrived with a strange stillness in the air. The city outside the penthouse hummed as usual, but inside, every sound felt sharp, deliberate, like the world itself was holding its breath. Alyssa stood by the drafting table, finalizing the fake blueprints she had spent the entire night designing. Every line was precise, every measurement perfect. But beneath the surface, the plans carried one hidden truth, a silent alarm code embedded in the coordinates, one that would trigger Thomas's surveillance system the moment anyone tried to copy them. Lucia entered the room, her boots echoing on the marble floor. She glanced at the papers spread before Alyssa and nodded. You did well, she said. Franco's people will think this is real. Alyssa looked up. Are you sure he'll take the bait? Lucia smirked. Franco never resists what he thinks he's stealing. And your ex-fiancé? He'll make sure it gets to him fast. Alyssa's stomach twisted. The thought of Cameron still disgusted her. The man she once trusted had traded her dignity for power, and now he was nothing more than a puppet in Franco's hands. But that was exactly what they needed him to be. Thomas stepped into the room, dressed in black, his expression unreadable. Everything's ready. The meeting is tonight at the South Dock warehouse. Cameron thinks he's attending a private showcase for investors. Franco will be watching from a distance, waiting to intercept. Alyssa straightened. And you're sure the warehouse is secure? As secure as anything can be in this world, Thomas said. But there's always risk. She met his eyes. Then we're ready. Night fell fast. The dock shimmered with wet asphalt and flickering lights. The air smelled of rain and salt, and the sound of waves hitting steel carried across the darkness. Inside the warehouse, Alyssa stood beside Thomas, her hands clasped tightly around the folder containing the fake blueprints. The place was quiet, too quiet. Vincent's voice came through the earpiece. Cameras are live. Perimeter clear for now, but movement near the east entrance. 3 men, armed. Thomas's voice was calm. Let them in. We want them to think they're in control. Moments later, footsteps echoed through the open space. Cameron appeared first, wearing a confident smile that faltered slightly when he saw Thomas and Alyssa standing side by side. He tried to cover it with charm. Thomas, Alyssa, it's been a while. You look happy. Alyssa's grip tightened on the folder. Not for long, she said under her breath. Behind Cameron, 2 of Franco's men entered. They looked out of place, muscles in suits, hands resting too casually near their jackets. One of them gave a small nod toward the shadows, signaling to someone unseen. Thomas leaned forward slightly. You brought company, Cameron. That's rude. Cameron forced a laugh. Investors like to feel protected. You understand. Alyssa opened the folder, laying the blueprints on the table. The false project looked impressive. A luxury marina complex that didn't exist. Cameron's eyes gleamed with greed. He picked up one of the pages, scanning it quickly before sending a photo on his phone. The moment the shutter clicked, Thomas's expression changed. Got you, he said quietly. Across the street, in a black SUV, Franco stared at his own phone as the image came through. His smile vanished when his screen suddenly went dark. The hidden code had activated. His GPS signal had been traced. The car's engine died. In the warehouse, alarms triggered in Thomas's earpiece. Lucia's voice cut through the noise. We've got him. Signal locked. Agents are moving in now. Cameron looked up, confused. What's happening? Alyssa met his gaze, her voice steady and cold. You're what's happening. You thought you could sell me out and walk away. You were wrong. He stepped back, fear flickering across his face. Alyssa, you don't understand. I was forced. Thomas cut him off. No one forced you. You chose the money over loyalty. Over her, sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Cameron's phone buzzed again. He looked at the screen, panic flooding his eyes. He's coming here, he whispered. Who? Alyssa asked. Franco. He's coming himself. Before anyone could move, the warehouse lights flickered and went out. The darkness swallowed everything. Vincent's voice came through, tense. We lost external feed. Someone jammed the signal. Thomas pulled Alyssa close. Stay behind me. A shadow moved near the doorway, then another. Gunfire erupted, sharp and deafening, echoing off the steel walls. Thomas shoved Alyssa behind a stack of crates, returning fire as his men poured in from the sides. In the chaos, Cameron tried to run but didn't make it far. A single shot rang out, and he fell to the ground, clutching his shoulder, screaming. Thomas's voice cut through the noise. Move to extraction point 3. Now. Alyssa's hands shook, but she followed him through the maze of crates toward a back exit. The sound of footsteps and shouts echoed behind them. Rain poured through broken skylights, mixing with the smell of smoke and metal. When they reached the door, a figure blocked their path. Franco himself stepped out of the shadows, drenched, calm, a pistol in his hand. His smile was slow, cruel. I must admit, D'Angelo, you've become predictable, Franco said. But bringing your little wife to a gunfight? That was a mistake. Thomas raised his gun. Let her go, Franco laughed. Oh, I don't want her gone. I want her alive. So you can watch what happens when I take everything from you again. Alyssa stepped forward before Thomas could stop her. You'll never touch him. Franco's grin widened. Brave words for someone standing between 2 empires. Suddenly, lights flared behind him. Dozens of armed agents swarmed the dock, shouting orders. Lucia's voice boomed through a speaker. Drop your weapon, Franco. It's over. For the first time, Franco's composure cracked. He turned, realizing he was surrounded. Thomas didn't wait. He lunged, grabbing Alyssa and pulling her out of the line of fire as agents rushed in. Franco was dragged to the ground, handcuffed, shouting threats that faded under the storm. Alyssa turned to Thomas, her chest heaving. It's done, she whispered. He looked at her, rain streaming down his face. No, he said quietly. It's not done. Not until the people behind Franco are gone. She frowned. There's more? Thomas's expression darkened. Franco wasn't working alone. Lightning cracked across the sky, and for a fleeting moment, the light reflected off a sniper's scope on a nearby rooftop. Thomas's eyes widened. Get down! He shouted. The The gunshot tore through the night. The gunshot split the night like a scream from the heavens. Alyssa felt the air move before she heard the sound. Thomas's arm wrapped around her, pulling her down just as the glass behind them exploded. They hit the wet ground hard. For a heartbeat, she couldn't breathe. Then she saw the blood. Thomas pressed a hand to his shoulder, red blooming through his shirt. He gritted his teeth. "Stay down," he said. His voice was rough but steady. Rain poured harder, drumming against the steel roof of the dock. Agents scrambled for cover, shouting into radios. Lucia's voice crackled through the chaos. "We have a sniper. East rooftop. Take him down now." Thomas tried to stand, but Alyssa grabbed his arm. "You're bleeding too much. You can't move." He looked at her, rain mixing with the blood on his face. "I've been shot before. I'm not dying tonight." He pulled her behind a crate as another shot rang out, splintering the wood inches from her head. Alyssa's pulse thundered in her ears. She pressed her hands over the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "You saved me again," she whispered. Thomas gave a faint smile through the pain. "Get used to it." Minutes stretched like hours until the radio finally came alive again. "Target neutralized. Sniper down. Repeat, sniper down." Lucia rushed over, kneeling beside Thomas. "He's losing too much blood. We need to move him now." A black SUV screeched to a halt nearby. Vincent jumped out, throwing open the doors. Alyssa helped lift Thomas into the back seat, her hands shaking but determined. The drive back to the city was a blur of sirens and flashing lights. At the penthouse, medics were already waiting. Alyssa refused to leave his side as they treated him. When they finally finished, the doctor turned to her. "The bullet missed his lung by half an inch. He's lucky. He needs rest." When the doctor left, Alyssa sat beside Thomas's bed. His skin was pale, his breathing shallow but steady. She brushed a strand of wet hair from his forehead. "You're not allowed to leave me like this," she said softly. His eyes opened, faint but focused. "I told you I don't die that easy." She smiled through tears. "Good. Because I don't know what I'd do without you." He reached for her hand, gripping it weakly. "You'd survive. You always do." Lucia entered quietly, closing the door behind her. "The sniper wasn't one of Franco's men," she said. "He was hired by someone else." Thomas frowned. "Who?" Lucia hesitated. "The name came from one of our inside sources. It was someone higher than Franco. Someone who's been funding him from the start." Alyssa's heart tightened. "Who could that be?" Lucia met her gaze. "Marcus Devereaux." The name hit Thomas like a blow. Devereaux. The same man who built the empire that swallowed mine. I should have known. Alyssa remembered the name from news headlines. Marcus Devereaux. Billionaire investor. Philanthropist. The kind of man who smiled for cameras while crushing anyone who stood in his way. "Why would he want you dead?" she asked. Thomas's voice was cold. "Because I know what he's hiding. Devereaux runs his empire clean on the surface, but underneath, he launders weapons and money through men like Franco. Taking Franco down wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a war." Lucia crossed her arms. "Then we need to hit him before he hits us again." "No," Thomas said. "Not yet." He turned to Alyssa. "You did enough. You're out of this now." Her voice trembled, but not from fear. "I'm not out of anything. I've been part of this since the night you found me. You said you wanted a partner. Well, that's what you've got." Thomas stared at her, pride flickering beneath the exhaustion. "You have no idea what you're saying. Devereaux is powerful enough to make people disappear without a trace." "Then let him try," Alyssa said. "You taught me how to stop being afraid." "Now it's your turn," Lucia smiled faintly. "She's right, you know." Thomas exhaled slowly, wincing from the pain. He looked at Alyssa, his voice low. "If we do this, there's no going back. Once we touch Devereaux, we touch the entire network." Alyssa nodded. "Then we burn it all down." Outside, the city roared under the storm. Inside, the room pulsed with a dangerous calm. For the first time since the chaos began, Thomas saw something new in her eyes. Not fear, not anger, but fire. Hours later, while Thomas slept, Alyssa stood by the window, watching lightning flicker over the skyline. She whispered to herself, almost like a promise. "They broke me once. Never again." Down in the streets, a convoy of black cars moved through the rain. In the back seat of the lead car sat Marcus Devereaux, calm and composed, scrolling through the news on his tablet. A headline caught his eye. Franco Varani captured. He smiled, slow and cold. So D'Angelo wants to play hero. He turned to the man beside him. Find his wife. If we can't reach the king, we'll use the queen. The rain swallowed the sound of his laughter as the cars disappeared into the night. The gunshot split the night like a scream from the heavens. Alyssa felt the air move before she heard the sound. Thomas's arm wrapped around her, pulling her down just as the glass behind them exploded. They hit the wet ground hard. For a heartbeat, she couldn't breathe. Then she saw the blood. Thomas pressed a hand to his shoulder, red blooming through his shirt. He gritted his teeth. "Stay down," he said. His voice was rough but steady. Rain poured harder, drumming against the steel roof of the dock. Agents scrambled for cover, shouting into radios. Lucia's voice crackled through the chaos. "We have a sniper, east rooftop. Take him down now." Thomas tried to stand, but Alyssa grabbed his arm. "You're bleeding too much. You can't move." He looked at her, rain mixing with the blood on his face. "I've been shot before. I'm not dying tonight." He pulled her behind a crate as another shot rang out, splintering the wood inches from her head. Alyssa's pulse thundered in her ears. She pressed her hands over the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. "You saved me again," she whispered. Thomas gave a faint smile through the pain. "Get used to it." Minutes stretched like hours until the radio finally came alive again. Target neutralized. Sniper down. Repeat. Sniper down. Lucia rushed over, kneeling beside Thomas. "He's losing too much blood. We need to move him now." A black SUV screeched to a halt nearby. Vincent jumped out, throwing open the doors. Alyssa helped lift Thomas into the back seat, her hands shaking but determined. The drive back to the city was a blur of sirens and flashing lights. At the penthouse, medics were already waiting. Alyssa refused to leave his side as they treated him. When they finally finished, the doctor turned to her. The bullet missed his lung by half an inch. "He's lucky. He needs rest." When the doctor left, Alyssa sat beside Thomas's bed. His skin was pale, his breathing shallow but steady. She brushed a strand of wet hair from his forehead. "You're not allowed to leave me like this," she said softly. His eyes opened, faint but focused. "I told you I don't die that easy." She smiled through tears. "Good. Because I don't know what I'd do without you." He reached for her hand, gripping it weakly. "You'd survive. You always do." Lucia entered quietly, closing the door behind her. "The sniper wasn't one of Franco's men," she said. "He was hired by someone else." Thomas frowned. "Who?" Lucia hesitated. "The name came from one of our inside sources. It was someone higher than Franco. Someone who's been funding him from the start." Alyssa's heart tightened. Who could that be? Lucia met her gaze. Marcus Devereaux. The name hit Thomas like a blow. Devereaux. The same man who built the empire that swallowed mine. I should have known. Alyssa remembered the name from news headlines. Marcus Devereaux. Billionaire investor. Philanthropist. The kind of man who smiled. For cameras while crushing anyone who stood in his way. "Why would he want you dead?" she asked. Thomas's voice was cold. "Because I know what he's hiding." Devereaux runs his empire clean on the surface, but underneath, he launders weapons and money through men like Franco. Taking Franco down wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of a war. Lucia crossed her arms. "Then we need to hit him before he hits us again." "No," Thomas said. "Not yet." He turned to Alyssa. "You did enough. You're out of this now." Her voice trembled, but not from fear. "I'm not out of anything. I've been part of this since the night you found me. You said you wanted a partner. Well, that's what you've got." Thomas stared at her, pride flickering beneath the exhaustion. "You have no idea what you're saying. Devereaux is powerful enough to make people disappear without a trace. Then let him try, Alyssa said. You taught me how to stop being afraid. Now it's your turn. Lucia smiled faintly. She's right, you know. Thomas exhaled slowly, wincing from the pain. He looked at Alyssa, his voice low. If we do this, there's no going back. Once we touch Devereux, we touch the entire network. Alyssa nodded. Then we burn it all down. Outside, the city roared under the storm. Inside, the room pulsed with a dangerous calm. For the first time since the chaos began, Thomas saw something new in her eyes. Not fear, not anger, but fire. Hours later, while Thomas slept, Alyssa stood by the window, watching lightning flicker over the skyline. She whispered to herself, almost like a promise. They broke me once. Never again. Down in the streets, a convoy of black cars moved through the rain. In the back seat of the lead car sat Marcus Devereux, calm and composed, scrolling through the news on his tablet. A headline caught his eye. Franco Varani captured. He smiled, slow and cold. So D'Angelo wants to play hero. He turned to the man beside him. Find his wife. If we can't reach the king, we'll use the queen. The rain swallowed the sound of his laughter as the cars disappeared into the night.